Okay, so today we're going to look into how we can use loops to create more realistic motion for our About Me animations. So this is the animation that you should have built so far. It has 3 different backdrops, one for each scene, and then your character should say 3 different facts and move around the screen. So this is not a bad start, but we can use repeat loops to make a lot more realistic motion. So to get started, you want to go to the control menu, which is where you're going to find your different types of loops. Today we learned about repeat a certain number of times loop, repeat forever loops, and then also repeat until. For most of our animations, we can just use a repeat a certain number of time loops to create the motion effect that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and drag my character over here so that I can see him do the motion I'm going to test out across the screen. So one thing that you need in order to create realistic motion is you need a sprite that has multiple costumes. So this sprite did not have 2 costumes that looked like walking, but it did have one costume that I kind of liked, this one, Dinosaur 1E, and I simply right-clicked and clicked duplicate. And then to make my second costume that's up here, I took the copy and I selected the character, and he was grouped. So then I clicked ungroup, and you can see his different parts are now selectable, and you can rotate them until it makes it look a little bit different. So maybe he looks like he's moving. So now when I switch between these costumes, you can see that it might look a little bit like motion. So I'm going to delete that third costume. That was just a demonstration. But I have 2 costumes and I'm good to go. So back here, we have a repeat a certain number of times loop. Now to create motion, one thing that we're going to need is we're going to need to make the costume switch. So I'm going to pull out next costume and put it inside my repeat loop. Let's go ahead and click it and see what happens. So we see that he just quickly switch costumes. Doesn't exactly look like he's moving though. So if we go to the motion menu, we have a couple of options here. Let's say I just want the dinosaur to move in the X direction, so horizontally across the screen. I could just use change X by, or I could use move 10 steps. Let's go ahead and try move 10 steps and see what this looks like. So we moved across the screen. Kind of fast. If we want it to be a little bit slower, we can use something called a wait block. So I'm going to pull that out. And if we leave it at 1 second, the motion looks really slow. So I'm going to stop that. You want to actually use a value that's less than 1, and I'm actually going to use 0.1. And that looks a little bit better. All right, so my dinosaur is now moving across the screen. It's a pretty short distance. So if I wanted to move all the way, one thing I can do is I can change the value in the repeat loop. So now he's going to do it 20 times. Let's see how far he goes. Oops. All right, he moves a little bit further. Great. I can also do things like change the step size. We can see how that changes it. And each step in between is a lot bigger. So I don't think the step size makes it look more realistic. I'm going to change that back to 10. So that's one way we can make him move horizontally. Now, I like the horizontal movement for the first scene. So instead of using this glide block right here, let me stop that. I am actually going to use this repeat block that we just built. And we'll see what that looks like. Better. All right, but as we can see with the second and third scenes, the motion doesn't look as realistic. Now I do like him moving diagonally across the screen. So what I can do is, let me get rid of this loose block. We can build another repeat loop to replace this second glide block down here. And let's see, I'm just going to let him get to his next spot. And then I'm going to stop it. Okay. So what I want to do is, instead of this glide block, I'm going to have him glide to the corner of the screen but look like he's moving. So I have the repeat loop that I need. Now I'm going to come back to the looks menu, and I know I'm going to need a next costume block. I also know I'm going to need a wait block. I'm going to change this to 0.1. And I think I'm going to want him to go about that distance of 20 again. But instead of using move 10 steps, I can use the change x and the change y by blocks. So this is an xy coordinate system. If I want him to move in this direction, that means his x value is going to decrease because we're going to smaller, more negative x values, as you can see down here. And his y value is going to increase. So that means I need to change x by a negative value and y by a positive value. So I'm going to say change x by negative 10 and change y by positive 10. And I'll put that at the top of my repeat loop. And let's see what happens. So now he's moving up. It's a little bit steeper than I want though. So the value that's going to change how steep he rises is going to be the y value because that's the size of the step he's taking to move up and down in the y direction. So I'm going to make this smaller, like 2. I'm going to drag him back over here and let's see what happens. All right, that looks better. Kind of looks like he's doing a moonwalk backwards. You can play around with the x and the y values to see which direction you want him to go and how steep you want him to move. Let's say I want him to go to this upper right-hand corner. What I could do is change this to positive 10. And let's see what that looks like. Now he's moving up. So to add this to my animation, I'm going to swap that out for the glide block. And let's go ahead and see how this looks. And he's moonwalking back. Great. So the last step would be to swap out your last glide or your last change x by block and have your dinosaur move with realistic motion throughout your animation. Don't leave any loose blocks in your script area that is confusing and keeps it messy. Have fun adding this motion. Test out different values for change x and y and for the move 10 steps until you find something that you like. Have fun.